we're on right now between Peru and Toronto, Canada, with Scott Maudsley. Scott has been studying the JFK assassination. He's been a researcher for about 30 years. He's in Toronto, Canada. He's a Blue Jays fan, I suspect, right, Scott?
Yeah, insofar as I'm a sports fan, sure, why not?
I mean, gosh, I mean, you got to love your team, and it's amazing that the Canadians have beaten us at our own game. Good for them.
It's happened on rare occasion, yeah.
Yes, sir. And cocky, goodness gracious. I mean, I'm
Hey
proud to say
man,
that.
we were playing Texas, bro. They're Texans. They give as good as they get. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. No, Canadians are tough. They're tough. It's a tough nation. Beautiful country. I'm part Canadian. I'm technically Canadian American.
Oh,
That's way
nice.
back. Yes, my great grandfather, I think, crossed from Newfoundland over to Maine, and that's where my great grandfather was born, and the rest is history. But here we are talking about the JFK assassination. Now, give us your best case for why Lee Harvey Oswald is guilty, is what I presume you believe, or
Yes,
could I be
it is.
wrong?
No, yeah,
Okay.
that is correct. I believe Lee Harvey Oswald is guilty. Honestly, for the people that are active in the discussion of the JFK assassination, there's a whole group, collectively low nutters, people that believe that the official version of events is correct, that Lee Harvey Oswald is responsible for the death of President Kennedy and Officer Tippit. And for me, having studied the case for so long, I feel it's just a very simple, straightforward matter. The only
Sure.
way you can create a narrative that makes any logical sense is one that has Lee Harvey Oswald as the killer. There's no
Yeah.
other way to explain the events and the evidence in a way that makes sense or doesn't require you to, directly or indirectly suggest malfeasance, that people
Sure.
lied, that evidence was planted, or that it's fake, etc., etc.
So, bottom line, Scott, you don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay, great. Let's
Not at
let's
all.
look at what's if you look at the top of the list in your mind, what is the most compelling evidence pointing towards Lee Harvey Oswald's guilt for assassinating JFK November 22nd, 1963? What is the paramount thing that always has you convinced? Two or three, maybe it's two or three items, maybe it's two or three pieces of evidence or
Well,
facts,
like it's hard to nail down and say definitively the one thing, even though I myself often ask people what is the best fact in support of the argument that Lee Harvey Oswald did not assassinate JFK, or that the JFK assassination was the result of a conspiracy. I How can I put it? I guess the best fact in support of Lee Harvey Oswald having assassinated President Kennedy or killed Officer Tippit is pretty much what I just mentioned. Really, it's the only way it makes sense. That's the
sure,
only way. But the best fact, I guess, would be that he owned and possessed the murder weapon. That's really like the literal smoking gun right there. He had a
sure,
rifle. That rifle was used to assassinate the president from his workplace on the floor he was working on at the time of the shooting. He has no alibi for the time of the shooting, and an eyewitness saw him do it and picked him out of the lineup. So it's like,
right, sure.
you
And that
know,
was who?
Howard Brennan.
Yes, sir. Yeah, sure. Although they will discuss and dispute this whole issue of Howard Brennan's testimony.
Of course.
They'll claim that he refused to identify him at the time, but
Well,
what do they?
when he was shown the lineup, he didn't say it's none of these people. He didn't say the person I saw is not here. He said Lee Harvey Oswald most looks like the person I saw, but I'm not absolutely sure. Later on in his testimony, he clarifies that he was absolutely sure. He just didn't want to be the one pointing his finger at the guy because he was worried that others were involved and that they would get to him.
It's
So
interesting.
I mean, he still picked him out of the lineup. He could have said, no, the person I saw isn't here, but he didn't say that.
And, you could ask the question. It's possible to say that, arguably, that Howard Brennan was the first conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, in a sense he was, but I mean, okay, put aside the whole lineup thing. Immediately after the shooting, this civilian goes up to the first police officer can find, points up and says, "Hey, I saw somebody shooting from that window," and he gives a description of the guy he saw. Howard Brennan is the source of the description that like immediately goes out over the Dallas police radio, right? So I mean,
Yeah,
even if it's not Oswald, okay, there was somebody there who matched his description close enough, shooting from the place where we found the rifle and found the cartridges with the gun that we later determined was the gun that killed President Kennedy. So I mean, look, all the pieces fit. This is a very simple, straightforward affair here.
sure, sure. One little technicality. Actually, wasn't it the case, Scott, that he asked to speak to a policeman's supervisor? You know,
Honestly,
and
I'm not
I
entirely
remember
sure.
that. I think he actually did that, which honestly to me just strikes me as just crazy. I mean, give me
Yeah.
any cop, man. Hey,
Well,
officer,
like
you got a gun? There's
I
some guy that's
always
probably coming down the stairs that was on the sixth floor in this corner window. I saw him shoot the final shot. Get him.
yeah, I always thought that he just went up and told the closest cop, but I mean, again, the fundamentals in
Basically,
the
you're right.
immediate aftermath of it, he went up and told somebody, and very quickly that description went out. But however long he took to do that, it was too long, and it allowed Oswald the time to escape.
Well, sure. Yeah. Well, the thing about it is that it happened. It was pandemonium. Interestingly enough, I think that wasn't it his description of the shooter that was broadcast as an all points bulletin for the police.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in fact I think that was on when they announced that shots were fired, and they ended up I think using Howard Brennan's description of the assailant over the radio at KLIF, I believe, and went out throughout the city of Dallas, and people were looking for a guy who fit Oswald's general description. And Johnny Calvin Brewer, I think, was listening to the radio when that was given. And then what happens? He later sees Lee Harvey Oswald sometime later, in his
Yeah.
foyer.
Acting
Amazing.
shifty, right? Like he he was able to see that Oswald came in off the street, and he kind of like looked around, but he noticed he wasn't really looking at anything. And police cars went flying by, and when the police cars had passed, he went and looked out and then continued on his way. And Johnny Brewer thought that was very odd, so he followed him, and he was right. It was very odd. Oswald was in flight from having murdered a Dallas police officer.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty amazing. I mean, Johnny Calvin Brewer is I'm sure conspiracy theorists would say otherwise, but those who believe that Lee Harvey Oswald did the crimes, would have to say that Johnny Calvin Brewer, deserved a Presidential Medal of Freedom. I don't know if they had
Oh
it at the
yeah.
time, but
I don't know. I
maybe a
think they
silver
did.
maple leaf. Gee, gosh, Canadians love JFK, right?
Yeah, oh, big time, big time. Uh, they did have the Presidential Medal of Freedom at the time, because isn't that the medal JFK gave to Allen Dulles?
I really, I didn't know. I don't know. I didn't
I
know
think
that.
I think it is, yeah. And I know that it was the Presidential Medal of Freedom that Lyndon Johnson gave to Robert McNamara. So yeah,
Well,
I
there
think
you
they did have it
go.
at that time. Yeah, I
An
think they
American
did.
corrected by a Canadian. I mean, my hats off to you, buddy. I think I owe you a Labatt's beer or something, or some
Oh,
Molson's.
nice. I love it, bro. Come get out of Peru, come up to Canada. We'll drink some Canadian Club. We'll have a good time, bro.
Oh, great. Yeah, yeah. And by the way, I was actually outside of that factory in Windsor.
Oh,
I walked
nice.
by it once. But let's get back. Don't
Let's
let me
get
go
back to
on a tangent,
JFK.
Scott. Don't let me go
Uh,
off too much.
I mean, it's all there. Like he went to work that morning carrying a package. Some people dispute that he had a package at all, but I mean, quite obviously he did. He had it. Wesley Frazier saw it. Wesley Frazier's sister saw it. And I mean, what was in that package?
Of
What was in
course,
there?
Well, I mean, well, think about it for a second. I don't know if Lee was two-timing Marina. She was pretty cute, but I mean, maybe he had a surprise birthday gift for maybe a girlfriend on the side. Was that for his
Yeah,
mother? He wanted to surprise her, and he wrapped it up, and I don't know.
yeah, I suppose. I mean, but why take it to work with you on that day? I
It's
mean,
true.
okay, maybe that could be true, but if it is true, then Lee Harvey Oswald is just like the most unluckiest person who ever lived, like ever.
Well, sure. I mean,
And I
think about
mean,
it for a second. I mean, honestly, I mean, the facetiousness aside about the, a surprise gift for his mother, his girlfriend. I mean, goodness gracious, he tells him first of all that he has to get these curtain rods on a Thursday. What's the rush, man? And then, and then what happens? He goes he walks over to Johnny Kelvin Brewer's house, and kind of, it's a little bit forward. He opens up the
Wesley
rear door.
Frazier's house. Sorry to correct you there.
Oh wait, Buell Wesley Fraser. It was actually right. It was his sister's husband's house, right? I mean, I don't know, right?
I don't know. I believe it was those two living together. I always thought they were a brother and sister who lived together.
Oh no, they were, but there was. I think it was more like that she was at the house. I mean, there was Buell was sleeping on the couch there, and it was his sister's house with her husband. The Minnie Ray Randall, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, besides the point, he goes over to Bill Wesley Fraser's car. He opens the rear door, and he lays the package on the seat, and then that kind of startles Calvin Brewer's mother, who then sees the guy peering into the windows. It's kind of weird.
I think
And it
that
says,
was his sister that saw him peering through the window.
"Oh, could be, yeah, sure, could be." But I mean, it's weird. I mean, think about it. I mean, suppose um, you were going to take me to work, and I had a package, and I'm just not going to open up your car door. People left their car doors unlocked in those days, probably in Canada too. But it's a little bit odd. And then, and then it's all wrapped up, and that's kind of weird. I mean, curtain
Yeah,
rods are.
then he just sits in the car and just waits
I
for him
mean,
to come out and get in because the
well,
guy is crung. He's nervous as all hell, man. You know what that
sure,
guy's getting ready to do in a couple of hours? He he wants to keep his head down and his mouth shut and attract as little attention as possible.
absolutely, absolutely. And then, what else? What else about what happened at Dealey Plaza really sticks out for you, Scott?
Well, I mean, the majority of people whose eyewitness accounts can give us a number of shots, the majority of them say three.
Yeah,
And the where a person who was in Dealey Plaza thinks the shots originated from has a very strong correlation to their geographic position in the plaza itself. People
yeah,
who are closer to Elm in Houston believe the shots originated closer to Elm in Houston. People who are closer to the triple underpass believe the shots originate closer to the triple underpass.
interesting.
So it's like, again, it's just all the pieces fit. All the wounds are back to front. All the wounds have the entry in the back and the exit in the front. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I understand this is a hotly disputed topic, but let's just go
absolutely.
for it for now. When you
Oh,
extrapolate the trajectories backwards, they all
right,
go back to that position, the sniper's nest on the sixth floor.
right. And also one of the details that I found fascinating was that the workers, the black workers on the fifth floor,
Oh, yeah. Harold Norman and James Jarman.
amazing, amazing. And what they said, they heard a click, click,
Yep.
and then the shot, and then they heard shells falling up above them.
Yep.
You know? And in one case, the blasts were so strong that one of the workers had, I think, plaster fell on his head.
Yep. Yes, I'm familiar with this account. This is like a very good eyewitness account that strongly puts the origin of the shots on the floor in the window directly above these two. I guess you could call them both eyewitnesses and ear witnesses.
Yeah,
They
sure. Well,
were
sure. Well, they were ear witnesses. I don't think that, did they look up? I can't remember if one of them looked up at the window or not, but
Yeah,
what's,
there's a photo of him like leaning out, looking up at the window.
oh, wow. Yeah. Interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. And then of course you have, Howard Brennan. You have the fact that, one of the workers is there until about, I don't know, 12:15, having the fried chicken, the Dr. Pepper,
Hmm.
right? One of the employees, and he saw Lee Harvey Oswald up there, apparently, or, yeah, about that one particular point, I'm not clear about. Do you know that? I mean, one of the Lee Harvey Oswald at one point was asked by one of his coworkers if he was going to go down, and he said, "Well, I don't." He demurred, and then he said, "Please send up the elevator." Interesting.
Yeah, because it's one of those old school freight elevators. So I worked at a place that had one of these back in the day, many years ago. So the
Yeah,
way it works is there is an external gate and an internal gate.
sure.
So you have to, like, let's say you're loading the elevator, you must open the external gate, and when the elevator is there, you must open the internal gate. But
Yeah,
if
of
you
course.
close the external gate without closing the internal gate, the elevator will not function. So Lee Harvey Oswald, by saying, send the elevator back up to me, he could manipulate the gate when the elevator is at his floor. So it cannot be called by any other floor. It's a way to take the elevator out of play very cleverly, buys you some
Sure.
more time on your escape.
Absolutely. Well, okay, good. So then what else about let's say the first 30 minutes after the assassination, what stands out in your mind? Is there anything in
Well,
particular?
all of it. I mean, he just leaves in the middle of the day, doesn't stop to tell his boss, hey, I'm taking off. There's the incident with the bus where he runs up onto the bus that's caught in traffic on Houston. The bus driver lets him on. His former landlady just happens to be on that bus and
Yes,
recognizes him immediately, Mary Bledsoe.
yes.
So he sees the bus isn't going anywhere. He grabs a transfer, he gets off the bus, walks a couple blocks over, gets in a cab, and goes back to his rooming house. Like, what is your big rush? Where are you going? What are
Exactly.
you in such a hurry to get to or away from? It's just all very suspicious. And then he gets home, he grabs his gun, and then he goes from the location of the rooming house to the location at the Texas Theater. And in between those areas, a police officer gets killed, you
Right, but
know?
one thing also, I always like to bring this up. I'm sure you know this, but it just kind of really strikes me as amazing. Here he is, Lee Harvey Oswald, earning $1.25 US an hour. He takes his taxi, right? This is a working stiff. He takes a taxi, has the taxi driver pass it like 2 blocks, or maybe a little more, and he walks back.
Yeah, because he wants to scope out the scene. He wants to check, are the police there? Because he's kind of halfway expecting to come back to his rooming house and have it be swarmed by the cops any moment, because he
Sure.
knows what he's done and he's got to run.
Absolutely. They would call it consciousness of guilt, So, set us up a little bit. Have you looked very much into the Tippit murder?
Uh,
Something.
he's I'm no Bill Brown, with all due respect. My
Yeah,
good friend Bill Brown, that guy is the Tippit shooting expert. If you
sure.
want to get real in depth on it, you
Yes.
can
No, we,
talk
we
to him.
actually did interview Bill
Oh yeah,
extensively about that. But one thing that really stands out in
I'm
my mind is
I'm knowledgeable about it enough to discuss it.
absolutely, but the whole thing about the distance between the rooming house and the scene of the Tippit murder, 9/10 of a mile. How could he do it in only, you know, was it 11 minutes, 12 minutes? I mean, the fact is that Oswald walked everywhere. He didn't have a
Hmm.
car. He
He
was
was
pretty
a
fit.
non-smoking 24-year-old ex-marine.
Yes, sir. Now, Harlan didn't drink much either.
Yep.
And so here's a guy, 24 years old, still pretty good shape. Marines run everywhere. and or they walk fast everywhere. What does you know, the rooming house lady, Erling Roberts, notice about Oswald? You know, he's in a rush. He's
Yep.
in a rush. He comes in. You're in a hurry,
Yep.
amazingly, and then so you know the idea that he would somehow have great difficulty covering 9/10 of a mile, you know, it's just lost on people. You know,
The
but not for
the
me.
last time I was in Dallas, I was there with a group of us, all JFK nerds. Bill Brown was there. A bunch of people who have made appearances on your program were there. And
Yeah.
we actually walked it ourselves, and we took the most direct route between the rooming house and the Tippett shooting scene. And we walked it no problem in like 12 minutes, 13 minutes. And some of those guys walking it were in their 60s or even older, possibly. Still in good shape. All those guys are in wonderful shape, spry, handsome as all hell. But yeah, we were able to walk it in no time at all, just at like a normal walking pace, you know.
Yeah,
We
my son,
didn't.
you get this. Sure, my son's a Marine. He's a corporal in the Marine Corps, the U.S. Marine Corps, and he had to do 3 miles. I think he did it in like 20 minutes
Oh
of running,
wow.
of course. You know, but I mean,
3 miles in 20 minutes, I'd be dead.
yeah, and I know I did it myself in under 18 when I was in good shape, and so. But the point of the matter is that it was 9/10 of a mile, and
Mhm.
he went into his rooming house in a hurry. Right. And so, how about do you have any opinion at all about the Walker shooting? Have you looked into that? Have you delved into that, Scott?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you know, when you study the JFK assassination very quickly, you end up studying like a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I'm familiar with the Walker shooting. 100% that was also Lee Harvey Oswald.
No, okay, sure. And I hear people will say, "Oh, but wait, there were cars, people rushing away. Two men were
Yeah,
seen."
people say
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff, you know.
sure. Well, I mean, keep in mind there was an event taking place, a youth event taking place at the church nearby, the Mormon church nearby, and it kind of coincided nicely to kind of give some cover to anybody who wanted to, you know, pull off a shot, try to kill someone.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
actually, yeah, good.
Lee Harvey Oswald, you know, he wasn't the smartest guy, but he wasn't the dumbest guy either. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald, he I would say that he was of like above average intelligence. You know,
Oh yeah,
he read a lot, he was well informed about international events, and this is the kind of thing that real talk is right up his alley. He he knows to do stuff like this. He knows to look for cover. He knows to think about egress and exfil routes. He
exactly.
knows to hide the rifle. This is partly a byproduct of his formal military training in the Marine Corps, but it's also partly the byproduct of who he is as an individual. He's always had an interest in things like this, you know what I mean?
Sure,
So when his wife says he's acting out this fantasy, that's kind of what he's doing, you know? He's a political militant, and he's going
excellent.
to express his ideology through acts of political militancy, in this case political assassinations.
Sure.
He would have killed Walker if he could. He tried to kill Walker, he just got a little bit unlucky. And you know, when fate and circumstance threw another opportunity into his lap, he took it. All the
Mm,
pieces fit, man. It even Kennedy and Walker, it was the same gun, it was the same rare Italian bolt action Mauser variant that uses odd ammunition that is not commonly found in North American or European rifles.
yeah, and the other thing that's interesting about that I really find interesting is that particular bullet, it's a round tip. The rifle, it takes the rifling beautifully, and it's like a flying drill. They describe it as. It rifles perfectly, very straight, very lethal. And people will complain about it and say it's just a terrible gun. Actually, no, it's a pretty good gun. Some people will argue it's one of the best bolt-action carbines used in World War II. The Italians, they make fantastic cars and excellent products, excellent firearms. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
so you know, so
Beretta has been around since like the 1600s. They began making arquebuses for the Arsenal of Venice. Like the Italians know how to make a rifle. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Come on. I mean, just
Yeah. The
please, we're
Carcano
not stupid.
Model 91, the base model that the Carcano Model 9138 is the variant type of, that model long gun was the primary infantry weapon in the Italian army for like 50 years.
Sure.
They made it from 1891 to 1938. It's like it was good enough for them to use for like half a century. It's a regular normal bolt action rifle.
Right. And by the way, I mean, I don't know if in Canada you have a Marines as we do. I wonder, how many meters do they train at? They train to what? In the case of our
Um,
country.
I believe it's at 100 yards to zero a scope, and I don't know what that comes out to in meters exactly. In
Yeah, meters
Canada,
might
we use
be
both.
okay. Sure. I mean, it was 88. It was something like what, 88 yards between the sixth floor window and John F. Kennedy's position when he took the headshot.
Yeah,
So,
I mean
I
it's
mean,
in less distance than the scope of a rifle would normally be zeroed at, but it's also like well within the distances that Lee Harvey Oswald was trained on and certified on in the Marine Corps.
yeah,
He
absolutely.
demonstrated his competency with the M1 Garand on the iron sights, smoking targets at like 200 yards, 300 yards,
Up to
double
500.
up to 500 yards. Like, there's a great scene in the movie Full Metal Jacket where the drill sergeant asks them, does anybody know who Charles Whitman is? And nobody knows. He's the shooter at the Texas State University. And then
Yeah,
he goes, does anybody know who Lee Harvey Oswald is? And everybody, of course, knows who Lee Harvey Oswald is, right?
sure, of course.
Because
Sure,
they learned to shoot in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps
sure,
teaches you how to shoot a rifle properly. And it doesn't matter. Like you could have a unit of 100 guys. Someone in that unit is going to be ranked dead last in terms of rifle accuracy. He's going to be ranked 100 out of 100. But that's not to say that that guy is a bad shot in comparison to somebody from the general population. Compared to a
absolutely.
member of the public, that guy is a very good shot.
Sure. No, he's going to be a great shot. And if you go back to the Walker shooting, there's a couple things that stand out. One is, why on earth, in Lee Harvey Oswald's personal effects, are there photos? There's a photo of Walker's home, photos of like, as you alluded to, escape routes near the Turtle Creek home of General Edwin Walker. Why does he leave a note in misspelled Russian to his wife that she discovers on the night of April 10th, 1963, about a contingency concerning what she's to do if he's dead or arrested?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Oh,
Very
wait,
odd.
but you know what they'll say, Scott? They'll say, wait a second, but it's not dated and it's not addressed and it's not signed.
No. Oh, it's not notarized either, and there
Exactly.
wasn't
That's a very good point.
a court typist there to make sure it was taken down. Buddy, like this is real life. Like this is what I'm talking about. Belief in the JFK assassination conspiracy, it strains credulity. It takes us to a place where reality does not function the way it normally functions in everyday ordinary life. People don't act the way they normally do in everyday ordinary life. It's absurd and ridiculous. He did it. It's all straightforward. Like,
Sure. And then, of course, now, of course, you have to. What about Marina, right?
well,
Goodness
like
gracious.
I don't think Marina ever really lied about anything because I don't think there's a need for her to lie about anything. Like,
Oh, well,
I
yeah,
mean, there were other witnesses, plenty of people throughout the years that Marina and Oswald were married saw Marina with bruises on her and a black eye. Oswald's own mother doesn't deny that he gave his wife a black eye. So
oh,
I
sure.
mean,
She was terrorized. Marina Oswald was terrorized by Lee. And I actually think she loved the guy a lot. He was a bundle of contradictions. He could be very loving to her and to the children. He was like really, really had like a very, very unusual level of devotion to his kids. And the kids in the neighborhood, they considered Lee Harvey Oswald in Irving, Texas, to be like the Pied Piper. I mean, and at Beckley, they said he was just a fun guy to be around. He just was played with them, and he had a sincere interest in them apparently. But then he beats up his wife, and she's obviously, she's going to be scared out of her wits to be deported to the Soviet Union. Goodness gracious! But
Well, I
then
mean, from her perspective, I don't think it would be so bad to be deported to the Soviet Union. That's home. You go back
well, no,
home, you
sure,
go
but I
back to
mean,
your
at that
family,
time,
you go back to your friends.
well, if you read up on her a little more, you'll see that she came from a very, very troubled family background.
Well,
Um, she,
she was an orphan. Her family, her
yeah,
immediate parents were killed during the Second World War. She lived with her aunt and uncle, and I mean, the living circumstances were not ideal, but they weren't necessarily terrible either.
yeah, that one, I would say that at one point, Lee Harvey Oswald is trying to like force her to write this letter to the embassy, and she was she did not like the idea at all. She wanted to stay in the States, and to
Oh,
just
definitely.
yeah. I mean, to this day, she's still in Texas,
Yep.
but I do think she was scared. She was scared what would happen if she were to go back, and so when she was confronted with this letter in a book that Ruth Payne had brought over to the Six Flags Inn, not far from Dallas. All of a sudden, there was a Russian translator there, a Secret Service agent, if I'm not mistaken, and she was confronted about it. And what's he going to? What does she say? She mentions Edward Walker. Goodness gracious! I mean, here's a girl that doesn't speak too much English, and she knew about it,
Yeah.
and she let the
Well,
cat out of the bag. You
well,
know,
you know, when the police show up at Ruth Payne's house and they ask her, "Does your husband have a rifle?" Ruth says no, but she knows that that's not true. She says, "Yes, he does have a rifle. It's in the garage."
yeah, Marina,
And
exactly,
the cops go to the
exactly,
garage and they pull out the rug and it's still wrapped up. So she thinks the rifle is inside and she's like, okay, the rifle is going to be here. And through some miracle, it won't be my husband who did this because real talk, she's already suspecting that he did this when she found out that the
exactly.
shots came from his workplace. And when the police pick up the blanket that it's stored in and it just goes limp because there's nothing in it, her heart sinks. Immediately she knows, oh my God, he did this.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And
Her worst fear
that's
became
his
fun.
wife. That's the mother of his children.
Sure.
Obviously, she knows him. So
Exactly. I mean, this is why. I mean, I just think this is common sense. If you're married to somebody, you're in a foreign country, you depend on your spouse, and it's just natural that you're going to kind of want to not be very forthcoming with things, but then you're not stupid. And I mean, what is she going to do? She's going to cover up and say deny? Oh no, my husband doesn't own a rifle. Are you kidding me? No,
yeah,
she spilled the beans. She knew that his goose was cooked.
yep.
And so anyway, but
I
and what
mean,
else
coming
can
from the Soviet Union, Marina would be very intimately familiar with the nature of bureaucracy, right? So
and
she
police?
knows how to interact with the cops. She knows how to interact with government officials. Her uncle is a regional police officer in the Soviet Union.
Right. Yes,
People in the
very good
Soviet
point.
Union often have brushes with like authority, whether it's police, military, whatever. So
Sure.
they're more well versed in that than an American would be, I would think.
Sure. Well, I think the point I'd make about the Soviets is that you know, they had a lot of fear and loathing, and let's say they were very the word is wary, Wary, which for some
Yeah.
reason I have trouble pronouncing. They're worried about police because they had a lot of power,
Yeah,
and
because they come from a police state, right? It makes sense.
exactly, yeah, sure. So they were very, very careful, cagey about things with the police. But I mean, she knew that she just couldn't deny it. I mean, I,
Well, I
I, I
mean,
basically think that she was probably upset because she had been upset before with her husband because of I mean, she just thought that he was just crazy for having this rifle. she said to de Mohrenfeldt's wife that, Jean de Mohrenfeldt, that, here we are with my crazy husband. We barely have enough to eat, and he buys a rifle.
Yep.
So goodness gracious. So there you go. Looking at all the different conspiracy theories, is there anything else that stands out as especially, untenable? Gosh, maybe is that a tall order, different one, a difficult question to answer?
That definitely is a very difficult question to answer. When you've been at this for as long as I have, eventually you hear it all. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You name it, I have heard it before. I've heard it all before. So it's like at this point, I'm so desensitized to all of it. There's nothing that anybody could really say that I would be like, oh my God, that's so crazy,
Oh
'cause
yeah, no,
it's already been said,
William Greer. Wait,
Oh,
Scott, the
or
driver, William
Jackie
Greer.
herself.
Who?
Jackie herself. I've
Goodness
heard that.
gracious.
I've heard some absurd, ridiculous things, and I don't really think I could nail down which is the most absurd. I guess that one would be it. The one
Oh,
that
so
has
that's special.
Jackie
Yeah. Gosh.
shooting him. That's just like it's just so absurd. It's beyond the pale. It
Oh,
does
of course,
beyond it
well,
not making any sense. Beyond that, it's just nonsense.
No, I actually even, I don't know if I like that one more, or the one about William Greer turning around and blowing away JFK, from the front
Yeah,
seat.
with like 5 other
Goodness.
people in the car and nobody notices that he did that, or they're all in on it for some
Yeah,
reason.
sure. Of course. Yeah, the conspiracy soon becomes massive with just innumerable numbers of participants, but
Yeah.
anyway.
I
Oh,
mean,
listen, good.
the more it goes on, the bigger it needs to be, right? So
Yes. Gosh, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of people paying other people off, but there you go, So anyway, well, listen, Scott Maudsley, thanks so much for being on Quorum Radio. Good to hear from you. We hope to have other people who participate in JFK, TBT, or Truth Be Told. Thanks a lot as always. Godspeed to you, and hope to be able to talk with you again.